What's up, everyone? New World Economics here, and this is the November 27th frontline report for the Russo-Ukrainian War. We actually have quite a bit to go through today. There's, not a lot of offensive activity. There's one town that has been confirmed captured by the Russians, but other than that, there's just reports of skirmishing basically on 100% of the line, which is kind of a rarity, I guess you can say. Like sometimes some parts of the line could be pretty quiet. But we're going to break that down. We're going to go into some video. There's some video of some Russian artillery targeting Ukrainian logistics. There is some video and pictures of trench life and trench warfare that are really important to go through. So we're going to get into all of that. First, we're going to start in the Kherson region. The only thing to talk about here really is reports of shelling in both directions. And these reports are coming from the Ukrainian side. They are claiming that they are conducting precision artillery strikes in Oleshki, and then they're saying also that the Russians are just straight up shelling Kherson. The language they use in this, like saying that the Russians are shelling Kherson and they're conducting precision strikes in Oleshki, kind of implies that the Russians are being indiscriminate and the Ukrainians are being careful. There's no such thing with artillery. Like if you're trying to hit military targets in a city, it's going to turn into indiscriminate shelling of the city, and that's basically what's happening. So both the Russians and the Ukrainians here are appear to be engaged in shelling of urban areas. I will say, though, that Kherson probably has more civilians in it than Oleshki does, even with the Russians and the Ukrainians trying to evacuate both. All right, so moving on to the Zaporozhye front, we've gotten some more really vague reports, if you're asking me, of combat in the area of Guliaipol and Pologi. The Ukrainian side is claiming that they are shelling Russian targets in Pologi, and they have been for the last 24 to 48 hours. So they're trying to hit various different Russian hard points and defensive fortifications in the area to soften it up. Could be the start of some kind of offensive. Could be just daily artillery barrages. The Russians themselves are claiming that the Ukrainians conducted an offensive in the area sometime in the last 2 days, a rather large offensive that involved around 4 battalions. So, just off the top of my head, 4 full-strength battalions is about 4,000 troops. I'm assuming not all, they're not saying that 4,000 troops were on the advance. There was probably 1 or 2 of these groups spearheading with, 1 or 2 in reserve. But the Russians are claiming they, pushed them back. They dealt about 200 or so casualties in terms of dead and wounded to them. So that assault was somewhere in this area. We don't really have an idea of where. It appears like if it did happen, it failed. And I'm saying if it did because, I haven't seen any additional reports or video evidence of a lot of destroyed Ukrainian vehicles in the area. All right, so moving to Pavlovka, the Ukrainian side is claiming that the Russians are trying to advance again in Pavlovka with no avail. I actually do have our first bit of video I'm going to bring up here. It is, let me see here. It is video basically to showcase the mud and what there we go, what the Ukrainians and the Russians are dealing with. So what you're seeing here is a tank that was left behind during the initial assault, the Russian assault on Pavlovka over the last month. And this tank is absolutely stuck in the mud. It's a Ukrainian tank. The Russians are recovering it. That's a pretty good example for what you're dealing with in Ukraine this time of year. So in terms of major advances, don't expect any real major advances until the ground hardens, because if either side goes too early and tries to conduct an offensive, this is what they're going to be dealing with. So I don't really expect a lot for maybe a week or two. There's some people are claiming sometime in the next 2 weeks the ground will be hard, but I doubt it's going to be that hard there. All right, so glossing over the area from Marinka to Avdiivka real quick. There are reports basically that the Russians are pushing across this entire line. We have Russian advances in Marinka, acclaimed Russian storming of Krasnogorovka, which, based on the fact that the information stops there, that the Russians attempted a storming of the town. There's been no report that they've captured the town or at least even got a foothold in the town. So we're going to assume that this was a failure. There is still constant fighting in the direction towards Novelskoye. We've talked about this location a couple times. There's a raised up earth structure in the ground that the Ukrainians are using for fortification here. There's fighting, of course, in the area of Pervomaysk, Vadian, Opitny. And then we have some video that I'm not going to show. It's not appropriate for YouTube or for this channel. But there's some video out of entrenched location, fortifications, trenches, and stuff that has been absolutely devastated by artillery. The video was filmed by the Russian side. Supposedly, it's a position that they've taken sometime in the last 2 weeks near Avdiivka. The claim is that they inflicted pretty heavy casualties on the Ukrainian units in the area. Don't know if that's true. It definitely appears like one fortification has been captured. So there is offensive pressure on Avdiivka as well. So as you can see, basically the entire line, all the places that make sense for the Russians to attack, they're trying to attack. So probably the biggest news of the day comes from this area south of Bakhmut. The Russians have moved in and seized the small town of Ozarianivka. So down here in the south. So we're assuming the Russian lines right here more or less look something like this now. And then going off that success at Ozarianivka, they have entered into Kurdyumovka, allegedly from multiple different directions, and seized over half the town. I'm skeptical of that. I think that probably just the bottom half so far is what we're going to go with. So we have some Russian advances to the south of Bakhmut here, probably some of the biggest chunks of territory captured in the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, Bakhmut in general, there's a lot to talk about here. This is where a lot of the photos and pictures we're getting of trench life is coming from. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So, just going through these real quick. This is allegedly from a Ukrainian soldier sitting in the trench. It's kind of tough to see here, but these are his feet and his legs. You can see it's very muddy. This is very miserable stuff to endure. This is the line that these soldiers are on. You can see this is a power plant somewhere in the background. Not exactly sure which direction this is facing, but we are guessing that this was once a hedgerow of trees separating the fields. It's been completely blasted and obliterated by artillery. This is, World War I level stuff. This is a Ukrainian soldier in the trenches. You can see he's covered in mud, covered in what looks like some, not necessarily winter gear, but warmer clothing. Thankfully, having a can of tuna or something. This is another trench full of water. Miserable stuff. This is a very interesting photo. It's actually the two pictures on the right are from the Battle of Ypres, I believe is how it's pronounced, which is northern France almost 100 years ago during the Great War. And then the other side is the photos you just saw of Bakhmut. So definitely some similarities there. These are some Ukrainian troops that have been rotated off of the front line in Bakhmut, covered in mud. They look absolutely miserable. The front line situation there has to be pretty terrible at the moment. Guy catching his breath. you can only imagine what these guys went through in terms of those artillery barrages and stuff that we're seeing right here. Just surviving this would be absolutely insane. Let's make sure that the sound's cut off here. This is more trench life. As you can see, these guys are just sitting in the trenches, water on their feet. This is not going to be good once winter starts. Just having wet feet in general, this could lead to a lot of attrition on the front lines. You're starting to see a lot of snow in a lot of different places, depending on the time of day, I guess. Not everyone is enduring bad conditions. This video was posted by the Russians, and I think, definitely the idea here is to portray the fact that trench life for the Ukrainians is terrible, but for the Russians, it's like a winter spa or something. It's definitely not true. This is probably from a more or less quiet part of the front. The Ukrainian side certainly has, some soldiers on the Ukrainian side certainly have the luxury of this, to have basically what is like an underground barracks with beds set up, crates used for the walls. You have a stove, heating stove. So it's not that terrible everywhere, but supposedly, I guess this is where they shower and bathe and stuff. Some more video of trench life. It's pretty rough stuff, And look at this, these guns, these weapons, just caked up with mud. Can't be good if you get in a fight. Although the AK is supposedly a very durable gun that can deal with that kind of stuff. This looks like probably the same trench. Definitely seems to be Ukrainian soldiers with the yellow markings, yellow tape. And this is a good one. Just show how deep the water is in these trenches and these foxholes. Definitely not ideal conditions for fighting on the front. So, hopefully you guys took some from that. I think it's pretty extreme. The conditions we're starting to see, it's only going to get worse with temperatures dropping. You're going to start seeing soldiers with frostbite and trench foot and various other different, winter attrition, injuries or diseases that are going to be popping up on the front lines. So, just keep in mind, on both sides, these are human beings and they're living in rather terrible conditions. So, to go along with that, what the Russians are saying is that they now have fire control over the entirety of the entryways and exit points in and out of Bakhmut. So from somewhere in the south, they're able to fire on, we'll crank this up, they're able to fire on the roads coming in and out directly to the west of Bakhmut, and probably using this position here, this gas station that was seized, they have a great vantage point that overlooks all of the roads leading in and out to the north and northwest of Bakhmut. So this could be pretty bad, probably is pretty bad for the Ukrainian defenders in the area. Could, suggest that the Russians have got the Ukrainians in a bit of pickle in terms of logistics. If there's a lot of troops in the area of Bakhmut, they need a lot of supplies daily in order to keep up the fight. You have a lot of trucks moving in and out of the town. If the Russians are shooting them all, that's going to make the situation for those troops on the front line much, much worse. We do have some evidence that is already happening to some extent. I've seen a lot more video footage of logistics being targeted on the front line by the Russians. So let's go ahead and bring that up. Actually, I'm going to do it with movies and TV player because it's just better. So this is Ukrainian truck logistics that are moving through the frontline fields. You can see it's pretty typical. They're following an already used path because they know there's no mines on that path. Pretty difficult task, as you can see, to get logistics and ammunition, especially up to the front. That explosion you just saw there was likely a truck full of ammo that was hit by some kind of anti-tank guided missile. Possible that it could have been a mine, maybe Krasnopol laser guided artillery. Who really knows? Definitely, bad in multiple ways. One, because there was definitely troops driving that truck. Two, that's a lot less ammunition that's going to wherever these vehicles are going. This is a quadcopter that appears to be dropping. You can't really tell what it's dropping on, but that's just like a small grenade. Probably this is going onto a cache of either ammunition or anti-tank guided rockets. You can tell by the size of the blast that was definitely ammunition or something there that was struck by that grenade. So another big loss for the Ukrainians there. And then finally, this is a train in an unknown location throughout Ukraine that was hit by Russian missile strike. You can see one train one tank on the train is damaged. Several more appear to be knocked off the train further down the track. All in all, we're seeing a lot of stress put on Ukrainian logistics, a lot of stress on troops on the front line for both sides. Just a very, very bad situation. So finally, to talk real quick about the Svatova front, we have some updates here. The Ukrainians are claiming that there's still heavy battles going on in the area to the southwest of Crimea. So the Ukrainians are trying to push down here. I guess we can zoom in a little more for you guys. Make this a little bigger. They're trying to push on Dobrova. They're trying to recapture the positions that they once held in these forested areas to the south. There was a claim that Dobrova might have been captured by Ukraine. This was made by the Ukrainians 2 or 3 days ago. It appears like, if that was true, they have been pushed out. There's no absolute confirmation that the Ukrainians have captured this town, but this is the target right now, is to put pressure on Dobrova. That way they can put pressure on Crimea and the entire Severodonetsk area. Up to the north, there is continued reports, even from the Ukrainian side, that confirm that there is heavy fighting in the area of Ozarianivka. So this was a town occupied by Ukraine. The Russians attacked it 3 days ago. They managed to move back into the town, reestablish their positions there. As far as we know, they haven't actually captured the entirety of the town. There's probably Ukrainian positions still on the complete western side of town that they're holding on to at the moment. But once this area does fall, if it does fall, the Russians should be able to easily push the Ukrainians back to the riverbank, which is in this area right here. So the new line might be something like this, potentially. So the Ukraine definitely wants to hold on to their foothold here. They don't want to be pushed back anymore. This is the most direct route into Svatova. They need to recapture Novoselevsky, Kuzimivka, Kirvashkivka in order to push the assault on this area. All right, guys. That's it for me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.